I've been a trucker for close to 15 years now. This happened to me in 2017 during an overnight haul through the Mojave Desert in California, headed for a destination in Arizona. I was delivering appliances, though the exact details are fuzzy now. What I remember vividly is the pitch-black darkness that enveloped me. The headlights on my semi were really dim at the time, and I'd been putting off getting them fixed forever. Usually it didn't matter much, but out there in the desert, with no other cars on the road, it was glaringly obvious. I had to strain my eyes every few minutes just to make out the road ahead. I debated pulling over and waiting for sunrise, but I desperately needed the money and decided to push on. After all, the route was a straight line. What could go wrong? It was about an hour before sunrise when I saw something approaching fast in the distance. Worried about hitting an animal, I slammed on the brakes. As my truck screeched to a stop, I realized what was in front of me. A car with its hazards on, parked dead center on the double yellow lines. The passenger door was wide open. My truck stopped maybe a foot before hitting it. Now I'm a pretty fearless guy, and I've been in my fair share of bar fights, so I wasn't scared. I was more curious than anything. I thought maybe someone needed a jump or something. So I reversed the semi and pulled over. I considered throwing some flares down but decided against it, since I hadn't seen another car on the road besides this one. I got out of my truck and made my way over to the car. It was a warm, still night, and the silence was almost eerie. The only sound was the faint clicking of the car's hazards. As I got closer, I noticed it was a new-looking red Ford Fusion. The passenger door being wide open made me cautious. I walked around the car and stopped dead in my tracks. It was completely empty. I checked the back seat, the floor, everywhere. There was literally no one inside. Suddenly, the situation felt a lot more sinister. I cast glances over my shoulder, feeling increasingly uneasy. The darkness was oppressive, and my truck's headlights only pierced so far into the night. I felt exposed, like someone was watching me from the shadows. Against my better judgment, I decided to investigate further. I looked inside the car again. Everything seemed normal. The key was in the ignition, but the engine was off. I got out and went to the trunk. It wouldn't budge. Locked. I grabbed the key from the ignition and unlocked it, but still, it wouldn't open. I tried accessing it from the back seat and, to my surprise, managed to pop it open. Inside were 3 squished garbage bags and a rope tying the trunk shut. I glanced over my shoulder again before reaching for the bags. The coast seemed clear. I was within inches of one of the bags when the loudest gunshot I'd ever heard rang out. I slammed my head on the roof of the car in shock. Without thinking, I threw the keys on the front seat and bolted for my truck. As I was climbing in, I heard a grungy voice yelling from the distance, getting closer. He was shouting, "Hey," repeatedly. I scrambled into the semi, turned it on, and threw it into gear. The engine initially stalled, and I cursed under my breath. As my truck began pulling out, I saw him. A short, husky guy with red hair, wearing overalls and shin-high boots. In his left hand, he held a small shovel, and in his right, an old hunting rifle. We locked eyes as my truck drove past him. He didn't look crazy. He had a worried expression. As I drove away, he dropped his shovel and started waving his hands, yelling, "Wait!" But there was no way I was stopping. I sped down the road, pushing the semi faster than I should have. 5 minutes later, I saw headlights fast approaching from behind. Panic set in. I called the police and tried to explain what had happened. The car was right on my tail, honking like mad. I didn't know what to do, so I just kept driving, praying he wouldn't ram me. After about 15 minutes, he cut in front of me and hit his brakes, forcing me to slow down. I was about to crash into him when I saw flashing police lights ahead. The car veered off the road and disappeared into the desert. I pulled over, waiting for the officer. I frantically told him what had happened, but instead of chasing the guy, he decided to take a report. I was furious. I insisted he could catch the guy if he left now, but he told me not to worry and that they'd search the area when backup arrived. They never called me with an update. None of my buddies have a story this crazy. I've told it more times than I can count. People often say that guy was probably burying bodies, but that doesn't explain the small shovel or why he tried to follow me. The bags were too small for bodies, though some of my friends think he might have been dismembering something. For my own sanity, I like to think he was burying some kind of animal, maybe a diseased dog or dangerous snakes. I have never forgotten how I felt at that time. As I drove away from the scene, my heart still pounding in my chest, I couldn't shake the image of that red-haired man and his eerie, worried expression. What was he doing out there in the middle of the desert? Why was he so desperate to get my attention? And what was inside those squished garbage bags in the trunk of the car? I never got any answers. The police never called back, and I never heard any follow-up about the incident. It remains one of the most unsettling experiences of my life, a mystery that lingers in the back of my mind every time I drive through the desert at night. But what do you think was really going on? Was the man burying something sinister, or was there a more innocent explanation? Could the bags in the trunk have contained something other than what we might fear? And why do you think he tried to follow me? I'd love to hear your theories and analyses of this bizarre encounter. Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and let's see if together we can piece together what really happened that night in the Mojave Desert. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real-life horror stories. Until next time, stay safe out there.